The Center for the Improvement of Human Functioning International presents this luncheon lecture. Today's topic, Breathe Better, Feel Better. Your presenter, Chad Krier, ND, DC.
Well, we're going to talk about breathing, and we're actually going to go through some exercises, so hopefully by the time we get to those, you'll all be done stuffing your mouths and we can start breathing better. So what does breathing do for us? We're going to talk about some of the good things that breathing can do. One of the things that it does is it's an effective way to calm the mind, nerves too. So it helps calm the mind, so that's one of the good things that it can do. It also affects the involuntary control centers in the brain, and those are the centers that can issue stress and alarm signals. So it can help calm the brain. So it does calm the mind, it affects the brain, the involuntary control centers. It oxygenates the blood, so it oxygenates the tissues, and it also expels wastes. So we bring in good stuff, we help blow out the bad stuff. So we can bring in the good nutritious oxygen and blow out wastes all through the lungs. It also regulates autonomic function. So autonomic function are those things that we don't regularly think about. One of those is breathing. So the effect that breathing has on heart rate, on just our muscle control, all kinds of different things that go into the autonomic function. Well, when we look at the effects of breathing, we're going to talk about why there is benefits to breathing besides that it helps us stay alive. There's also other things that it does. We know that many bacteria are anaerobic. That anaerobic means that they're either oxygen, is it hating or loving? Hating, so they hate oxygen. So many bacteria actually don't like to be around oxygen. So a lot of them actually thrive in an oxygen-deprived environment. So giving oxygen can be beneficial to get rid of bacteria. If you think of gangrene, the treatment for gangrene a lot of the time with the anaerobic microorganisms was to put people in the oxygen chambers, feed those bacteria oxygen, eventually they die off. So more oxygen, please. We know that many chronic diseases, we think, result from poor oxygenation. But at the same time, when you have a chronic disease, poor oxygenation may be a component of it. So the chicken or the egg type thing. A lot of the times, not getting enough oxygen into your body deprives your cellular machinery from working properly. Eventually, that cellular machinery becomes faulty, and you can start to build up metabolic waste products in your cells, and that can cause problems. On the other hand, you could have a chronic disease. Say you have arthritis that prevents you from going on long, regular walks or getting aerobic exercise. So eventually that disease leads to poor lung functioning. Well, anaerobic again means without oxygen, and aerobic means with oxygen. So anaerobic cycles, what happens when you have an anaerobic cycle, we're talking about taking the food that you eat and turning that food into energy without the benefit of oxygen. And when you do that, a lot of the times that energy without oxygen, you build up something called lactic acid. So lactic acid is an acid that can build up in the muscles, build up in the cells, eventually stimulate pain receptors in your body. So poor oxygenation can lead to pain patterns in the body. So we want to make sure that we oxygenate the body, and that can also help bring us out of pain patterns. If we look at aerobic metabolism, this is taking food and turning it into energy utilizing oxygen. So this here is basically just a carbohydrate. This is sugar. We've got sugar, we add oxygen, we get carbon dioxide, water, and ATP, 36 little ATP molecules. ATP are the energy molecules. They're the powerhouses in the cells that help give us fuel, that help us to be able to move, to help drive all of our cellular machinery. So that's energy. Also, we can take fats. This is a fat here. We can take oxygen, the oxygen we breathe in. We can make even more energy, 130 ATP, just from one fat with all these oxygen molecules. We can make lots of energy. But what happens if we don't have oxygen in our bodies? Now we take the sugar molecule and we get lactic acid, but we also only get 2 little energy molecules, 2 ATP. So it's much more efficient to burn your fuel in the presence of oxygen. You're going to make more energy. Your cells are going to run much better. If you're in an oxygen-deprived environment, you're going to get a little bit of energy, but mostly a big old pile of lactic acid buildup, and lactic acid can stimulate pain receptors and eventually cause problems. So definitely more energy production when you have oxygen available to your body. Well, if we look at the lungs, and we're going to go through breathing, but basically that air has to come in through our mouth, down the windpipe. It's got to go through all the different branches, and finally it gets to these little air sacs, and these little air sacs are blown up here. And this is, in the little air sacs, that's where the oxygen eventually comes out of those air sacs and gets into our bloodstream. So it has to go through our mouth, down the windpipe, through all the different channels, finally into the air sacs. From the air sacs, it goes out into our bloodstream, and then our blood is able to carry oxygen to all the different tissues of our body. So here's just another blown up version of what those air sacs look like. They really kind of look like big honeycombs. But that air has to get down all the way through everywhere, then builds up in these air sacs, and then these are just like, they have little bitty passageways through them so that the oxygen can come out, and that oxygen gets into the bloodstream. If these alveoli or these air sacs become blocked, then it's going to be hard to get the oxygen into the bloodstream. If we look here, we're going to look at the movements of how we actually bring air into our lungs, and then how we dispel that air to the rest of our body. So here's a picture of the air entering into the windpipe. It's going into the lungs. When we do that, the way to really get that air into the lungs is to have this diaphragm come down and to have the ribs expand. When the diaphragm comes down and the ribs expand, we create a negative pressure inside of our chest, and that air is able to just suck right in. So create a negative pressure, the air comes in, and then eventually diffuses to our air sacs. We deliver oxygen everywhere. Now when we breathe out, the diaphragm comes up, the ribs come push back in, we squeeze that water balloon, we squeeze that air balloon, and all the air goes back out. So you can think of it as creating negative pressure, sucking air in, squeezing that air back out. And I want you to really think about the importance of the diaphragm and the ribs when we breathe, because we're going to be going through exercises that help you really train the ribs and the diaphragm. Well, if you've ever been to your doctor and were complaining of a breathing difficulty, then you may have had a lung test. And generally, the test that they will perform is called spirometry. So basically, spirometry just measures the volume of air that you take in and then what your body does with that air. And the importance of spirometry, one, it lets us see how much air you're capable of taking in. But if you are complaining of some sort of breathing problem, it helps doctors determine if it's a restrictive problem or an obstructive problem. And we're going to talk about those two different types of things. That just shows you what a typical spirometer looks like. You go in, you breathe in a tube, you send air through that tube, and then we print out a graph based on that breathing. We're going to talk about some different terminologies that maybe you've seen on reports when you've been to your doctor about breathing. One of these is tidal volume. That's just the amount of air that you would normally breathe in and out just while you're sitting there. So you're not really sucking it in. It's just your normal breathing pattern, the amount of air that you breathe in and out. So we all average about 12 breaths per second. So out of each of those breaths, we're breathing in and out about a half a liter of air. Now the vital capacity, that's how much air the lungs can actually hold. So we know that our lungs can hold between 3.5 and 5.5 liters of air. So quite a bit of air. Then we've got the forced expiratory volume in 1 second. That's how much air that we can forcibly push out of our lungs in 1 second. And that can be quite a bit. Around 70% of the total air that you hold in your lungs, you should be able to force out in 1 second. Then you have the forced vital capacity. That's the amount of air you can blow out altogether. The reason that terminology is important because when you go to your doctor and they're explaining you have an obstructive or a restrictive disease, they may explain those terms to you. In obstruction, you may be able to take in the same amount of air as a healthy lung. You can breathe in all that air that a healthy lung would. The problem is the air cannot leave the lungs as quickly. So in a normal lung, that air can come in and it can go out just as quick. In an obstruction, that air may be able to come in, but it doesn't leave your lungs as readily. So the air is obstructed from leaving the lungs. An example of that is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Now in restrictive, the lungs are just not able to take in as much air. So the lungs just can't expand as readily as they should, and so the lung volume is reduced because restriction means that the lungs are just not able to get as much air in as they normally would. So basically, air is restricted from entering the lungs. So now you have a decrease in the total amount of air that you can bring in. Example of that is if you have a scoliosis. The scoliosis, or the curvature of the spine, causes a compression of one of the lungs. Now you've got a smaller lung mass. Now the lungs aren't able to expand as fully as they could if you didn't have that curvature in your spine. And so we call that a restrictive process. If we look at a normal chart of what goes on when you breathe, if you come into your doctor and you breathe in that tube, that spirometry tube, and you blow out air as hard as you can, they're measuring how much air you can blow out over time. And again, remember that the normal lung can hold between 5 to 6 liters of air in it. So what you should normally be able to blow out is around 5 liters. Somewhere around 5.5 liters of air. You're always going to leave a little bit of residual air in your system. But when you go to your doctor, over time, you should be able to really force that air out at least about 5 liters over a 6-second time period. The one thing that they measure is how much air you can forcibly blow out in 1 second. And you should be able to blow out about 2.5 to 3 liters in 1 second. That's a normal FEV1, forced expiratory volume, in 1 second. But what happens if you have an obstruction? Well, now you can still take in the same amount of air, but you're obstructed from blowing it out as quickly. There's some kind of obstruction that won't let you blow it out as quickly. So when you go to forcibly blow out that air, it takes longer. Normally, the normal curve should be right around here. Now it's taking you longer to get that air out. You're still eventually able to get that same amount of air out. It's just going to take you longer because there's an obstruction. If we look at restriction, you have a total decrease in the amount of air you bring in and in the amount of air that you blow out. So if we look here, normally it should be up here around 5. Now you're around 2 or 3, something that's lower than a normal volume of air. So it's restricted from entering the lungs in the first place. Well, we know that a lot of diseases can actually benefit from breathing exercises because oxygen is probably the main nutrient to life. So asthma, if you have breathing difficulties, obviously learning to breathe better is going to support asthma. Diabetes, if you have problems handling your blood sugar, we saw that you need oxygen to really process that blood sugar. So increasing your oxygenation helps you handle your food sources of energy, turning those things into energy better. Gastrointestinal disorders, breathing has a calming effect on the mind, calming down the gut, the rest and digest cycle. So if you can get your mind in a calm state by teaching it how to breathe, you can calm that gut, put yourself in rest and digest. Obviously, it can be very important for relaxing the autonomic functions of the brain, calming the brain, so it can have effects on psychosomatic and psychiatric disorders as well. If you're angry or agitated, do you tend to breathe nice and calm, or how do you breathe when you're angry or agitated? So yeah, when you're angry or agitated, you breathe short, uneven breaths. So if you're in a very hurried lifestyle, a busy work environment, it's always a good idea to take time and breathe throughout the day, because in our hurried pace, we know we're out there fighting, and that agitated state, pretty soon you're in that stooped posture, you're doing short, uneven breaths, you're not getting that oxygen that you need. If you're in a relaxed state, then you take, if you're sitting there relaxed, you're one with the world, you're breathing long and barely perceptible breaths. So long, fine, and barely perceptible breaths, and you're really getting that oxygen into your body. Posture also has an important effect on breathing. If you're stooped or flexed like this, you're really compressing the way that your ribs can breathe, because you need to really expand those ribs when you breathe, and you're compressing your diaphragm. So a setting posture where you're stooped over like this is not conducive to breathing all day. That's why lumbar supports are really effective, because they bring your chest up, they allow your diaphragm to fully expand, and they allow your ribs to fully expand. So when you're setting, it's a good idea to maintain an erect posture with a nice lordosis or a lordotic support. When you breathe, it's another good thing to think about is breathing through the nose and not through the mouth. So they always say don't eat through your nose and don't breathe through your mouth. You wouldn't put food through your nose, would you? In grade school I used to, but I don't do that anymore. The reason for that is that the lungs need protection. You don't just want to suck a bunch of dirty air straight into the lungs. You need to suck it in through the sinuses, through the nose, let the sinuses filter that air out, and then the sinuses will send that air to the lungs. So the sinuses have three main duties. One is they're a filter, so they filter that air before it gets into the lungs. Second thing is they regulate the temperature of the air. If it's too cold, they'll warm it up. If it's too hot, they'll cool it down. The other thing is they work as kind of a natural humidifier. So if they really just help regulate that air that you take in before it goes straight to the lungs. If you breathe straight through your mouth, you're missing out on all of these components. And so that can be very problematic. And actually sinusitis, the next step from having sinusitis is having lung disease. So if you can protect your sinuses, keep them healthy, you're going to be better off in the long run as far as your lung health goes. Well, what I really wanted to get to today was some breathing exercises. And so we want to go through these breathing exercises so that we can teach everybody to really optimize their lung function, optimize their oxygenation of their tissues. So the first one that I want to talk about is breathing through the nose, because a lot of us are chronically congested, so we tend to breathe through our mouths. If you breathe through your mouth, you're sending all that dirty air straight to the lungs. So we've got to train our noses to really be the first line of breathing. So who's ready? Is everybody ready? What you want to do first is just exhale through the nose. Exhale through your nose. Close your right nostril with your finger, and then breathe in through your left nostril as fully as you can. Once your lungs are full, close off the opposite side. Now breathe out through your right side. Okay? So you should have your finger over your left. Now breathe in through the right. Breathe in nice and fully. Then close off the right. And breathe out through the left. So that completes one cycle. You start with breathing in through the left side. Close off the left side. Breathe out through the right side. Now breathe in through the right side. Close off the right side. And blow out through the left. Okay? So that's something ideally to work up to, that you do about 10 to 20 of those a day to help retrain your nostrils to start doing the breathing for you. So if you can start breathing through your nostrils and not through your mouth, then you're a lot better off. And a lot of you probably already breathe through your nose, and it's not a problem. But if you've ever been in martial arts, different styles of karate and things, a lot of the time they teach you to breathe through the mouth. That's for a whole nother reason. But really, we want to breathe through the nose. That's the best way to do that. And those instructions are written there for you, so if you go home and you wonder how to do that, it's written down. Okay, now, and this is what we're talking about now is at rest. So we're going to talk about the different patterns of breathing. We've got your abdominal diaphragm. That's one of the muscles of respiration. We've got your intercostal muscles that line your ribs. Those are another of the muscles of respiration. Then we've got your upper chest and your neck muscles. Those are called the accessory muscles of respiration. And a lot of the time, if you see somebody who's having an asthmatic attack, those are the muscles they start to use because all this starts to shut off. Then they're really trying to suck that air in with their neck. Well, we're going to talk about using all three of those areas when we breathe. First thing we want to talk about is abdominal breathing. So again, when you breathe through your abdomen, that abdomen comes down, creates a negative pressure, sucks that air in. But it does more than that. When your abdomen's going up and down, all of your abdominal organs lie underneath your abdomen. So as you breathe, you create a pumping force with that diaphragm. It's gently massaging all of those abdominal organs. If you're uptight and not breathing well throughout the day, your abdominal organs aren't getting that constant massage from the diaphragm. That can lead to intestinal problems, constipation, all kinds of different things. So breathing is important for that abdominal massage. Also, you have a large amount of lymph channels in your abdomen. So that diaphragm pumps on those lymph channels and creates kind of a lymphatic massage. So it helps to keep your lymph flow in your body. So what I tell people when you're learning abdominal breathing, it's to lie on your back and put a book on your tummy and focus on watching that book move up and down so that you can really train your diaphragm. And this is what I'm talking about. This is his belly, and he put a brick on his belly, and then here's the legs. And so you put the brick on the belly or a book on the belly, and you really focus on moving that brick up and down. So here he had exhaled, and the brick came down, and then here he's inhaled, and the brick went up. Since we don't have the luxury of having our own tables, I'm going to have everybody just put their hands right over their abdomen. And what I want you to do, we're going to breathe in, and your hands should move out. And then we're going to breathe out, and your hands should move back. What I want you to do is breathe in as fully as possible and hold it for 2 seconds. 1, 2, then breathe out and hold that for 2 seconds. 1, 2. Breathe in, hold for 2 seconds. 1, 2. Breathe out. Hold for 2 seconds. 1, 2. Breathe in. Hold for 2 seconds. 1, 2. Breathe out. Hold for 2 seconds. So with these exercises, we're going to pause with our inspiration and we're going to pause with our expiration. So we're always going to give ourselves a pause just to help train those muscles of respiration. So that was abdominal breathing. And I wanted to make sure everybody's breathing through their nose when you do that. Breathe through your nose when you breathe in. Breathe out through your nose when you breathe out. Always have a 2-second pause after this abdominal breathing, okay? You can suck in too much oxygen. So that's the thing when you start these exercises, do it slow, because if you start sucking in too much oxygen and blowing out too much carbon dioxide, you'll put yourself into an alkalosis state. So if you feel like you're getting dizzy or you feel like, you can keep a paper bag beside you when you're learning these and just breathe in from that. But yeah, do these things slow and then gradually build up to them. Now, rib cage breathing. So that was the diaphragm. That's the lower part. If we want to get air into the lowest part of the lungs, you want to use the diaphragm. The rib cage, if you put your hands on your sides on the ribs, and you're going to breathe through the rib cage, and as you do that, your hands should come out like this, and then when you breathe out, your hands go back down. So what I want you to do is breathe through your nose, hold for 2 seconds, 1, 2, breathe out, hold for 2 seconds, 1, 2, breathe in, hold for 2 seconds, 1, 2, breathe out, hold for 2 seconds, 1, 2. Let's try to take some deeper breaths, okay? I'm just going to talk you through it. Breathe in for me. And hold, 1, 2, breathe out. and hold, 1, 2. Ideally, what we want you to do when you start doing these pauses, the 1-2 second pause, is listen to your heartbeat. So pause for 2 heartbeats. Initially, you can go ahead and count it out, but eventually, I want you to get in rhythm with your heart and just pause for 2 heartbeats, okay? Let's try that again. Breathe in. All the way, then hold, 1, 2, breathe out, and hold, 1, 2. Good. So we know that these intercostal muscles, you've got 2 sets of them. One set of muscles helps you to breathe in, and one set of muscles helps you to breathe out. When you think of the ribs, they're basically like a bucket handle on one of those 5-gallon buckets. When you breathe in, the bucket's handles come up and out, and when you breathe out, they come in and down. So you're just really working on getting your bucket handles going. And I have a picture so you can really understand what it looks like. It's my Superman here. That's breathing in, and then, again, breathing out. So now we're going to add all 3 components. We're going to do the upper chest, or the accessory muscles of respiration, and we're going to do the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. So you want to fill up the bottom of the lungs first, so you're going to breathe from the diaphragm first, then the intercostal muscles, and then the upper chest, okay? So first, if you put your hand on your tummy, and you just want to breathe in for 2 seconds there, then you want to breathe in 2 seconds here, then you want to breathe in 2 seconds here, and hold for 2 seconds. 1, 2. And then you blow it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pause. 1, 2. Okay? So what we're doing, we're going to breathe in with our diaphragm for 2 seconds. Breathe in here for the other 2 seconds. Breathe in up here for 2 seconds. Pause for 2 seconds. So a total of 8 seconds. 6 seconds we're sucking it in. 2 seconds we're pausing. And then 6 seconds we're blowing it all out. Then we pause again for 2 seconds. Okay? If you can't do the 6 seconds of sucking it all in, just do 1 second. So everybody suck in with their abdomen. 1, 2. Ribs. 1, 2. Upper chest. 1, 2. Hold. 1, 2. Blow out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Relax. 1, 2. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2. Blow out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold. 1, 2. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2. Blow out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. You're not breathing in real hard. You're just not trying to forcefully breathe in as much as you can. You're just breathing in for 2 seconds. Just a little bit. So just a little bit in the abdomen, a little bit in the ribs, a little bit in the upper chest. You're just trying to retrain all those, but you're not trying to force anything.
Does it matter how fast you do it? You were doing it really, to me, fast. Okay.
You do it with your heart rate is what I tell you. Count according to your heart rate.
You mean like 1, 2 heartbeat?
Yeah. And the more you do it, just you can go slower. If you've been doing breathing for quite a while, you could definitely do that slower. And over time, you would do that slower. This is just kind of the beginning steps of where to start. So again, you want to use you're going to use all 3 parts of your breathing apparatus. You're inhaling 1 section at a time. Then you're going to exhale the entire section. So you're using your abdominals, your rib cage, and your upper abdomen. And that's my point, is start with small breaths, and then, as you get better, you can start taking bigger breaths. So again, you're going to breathe through your abdomen first, then your rib cage, and then lastly your upper chest. So now we're going to do short and long breathing. So if you have any kind of respiratory problem, or you feel like you get lightheaded easily, this may not be the greatest exercise for you. But the goal of this is to strengthen the breathing apparatus. We really want to strengthen it and force it to work hard So if we can get the diaphragm and the intercostal strengthened over time, your breathing capabilities will be much better. So you're going to breathe quickly and contract the diaphragm and intercostals. That's going to strengthen them. It's almost like going to the gym and doing a workout, except we're doing it for the diaphragm and the intercostals. We know that slower breathing helps us gain neuromuscular control. The quick, hard breathing is going to help us strengthen these muscles. So what we're going to do here is just breathe out slightly and then breathe in as quick as you can with your abdomen, about half a second, and then you're going to blow it out for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you're going to immediately breathe in as hard as you can into your abdomen. Then you're going to blow it out through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're not really going to pause on this. So on this exercise, there's no pausing. We're just working the muscles. So if everybody puts their hands on their abdomen, and when I say quick, you breathe in, quick comes out, and then you blow it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, then quick. Blow it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, then quick. And then blow it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, then breathe in. Then blow it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're training the diaphragm on that one. And again, I think these are best learned laying on your back with a book on your tummy until you really get the idea of it. Then we're going to do short and long breathing with the rib cage. It's the same intent. You're going to really force those ribs to go. So put your hands there, breathe in quick, and then breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, quick. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. Really focus on moving those hands. Breathe in quick. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in quick. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're really trying to work those muscles. I tell people you can do 10 or 20 of those, but if you get lightheaded, have the paper bag around. The next thing is the bellows breathing. Now the bellows is real quick, and what we're trying to do is really draw in large amounts of oxygen and get rid of large amounts of carbon dioxide. Again, we're trying to really work our breathing apparatus. So on this one, I tell people don't go over 4 minutes and probably not over 10 reps initially. Every 10 reps should have 1 complete breath after it. So we're going to work like a bellow, really pumping the oxygen into the fire to get our cells working good. You want to try to do it smooth and gentle. This is just a picture of an old bellow. The blacksmiths used to use those. They pump that oxygen into the fire to get that fire nice and hot. Same thing with our bodies. We're pumping that oxygen into our cells to get that cellular machinery fired up and getting things burning. So that's a good analogy. What we're going to do here, we're going to breathe in for 2 seconds. Without pausing, we're going to blow back out for 2 seconds. Without pausing, we're going to breathe in again for 2 seconds. Blow out 2 seconds. Breathe in, blow out. So diaphragm, we're going to... So it's real quick. So if everybody puts their hands on their diaphragm, and we're going to breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to count 1, 2 in, 3, 4 out. 1, 2 in, 3, 4 out. Okay? Ready? 1, 2 in, 3, 4 out. 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 Now hands on your abdomen. Breathe in abdomen. 1, 2. Ribs. 1, 2. Upper chest. 1, 2. Hold 1, 2. Blow out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's a cycle. You can do between 5 and 10 bellows breaths, and then do 1 complete breath, and that makes a cycle. I recommend not doing more than about 5 cycles of that. Let's try 1 more cycle. Okay, breathe in. 1, 2 in, 3, 4 out. 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 Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, blow out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So breathing, you're doing that. You can try to do 10 of them, 5 to 10 of those bellows, and then 1 complete breath. Now the bellows you can also try to do with your rib cage. So if you want to breathe in with your rib cage, go 1, 2 in, 3, 4 out. 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 Then we're going to do a complete 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Rest 1, 2. Blow it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now, compound breathing. This is a little bit different. It's a combination of bellows and complete breathing, but you're alternating a little more frequently so that you don't really wear your breathing apparatus out. So we know if you do too much complete breathing, your respiratory muscles are going to get tired. If you do too much of the bellows, you're going to throw off your oxygen and CO2 levels, and that can cause problems. So we want to combine the two. It's ideal once you've learned to do the bellows to really start combining the two. And the combination of these two is what we recommend during exercise. So what you're going to do is perform 1 complete breath using all 3 parts of your breathing apparatus. Then you're only going to do 3 bellows breaths. Then you repeat. You go back and do 1 complete breath again. So what he's doing here is a complete breath, and then he does the bellows with his abdomen. So let's all try to do that. We're going to do a complete breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, blow it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, blow it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, blow out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So you keep doing that, and you can do cycles of 5 to 10 on that. But that's what you want to do when you're at the gym. So to answer the question on when you're working out, you're really not pausing. There's really no pause except for that complete breath if you can do that. You can do that. I think that's one of the better ones to do when you're exercising. But let's go back to the pause. You know, when you're learning these techniques, I say learn them while you're sitting or while you're lying down first before you try to incorporate them into exercise. Once you get them mastered lying down and sitting down, then test them while you're out walking, when you can really focus. Best to not do it with a partner. You know, you really need to focus on this at first. So, unless they're not going to talk your ear off while you're walking, but you want to try to learn these on your own at first. Then, you know, to go back to the pauses, if you're stationary, I say it's always not a bad idea to pause. If you're doing gentle exercise, it's up to you. Sometimes pause. If you're doing pretty good exercise, I say never pause your breaths, because you really need to get that oxygen in and blow that carbon dioxide out. Okay? So I learned these breathing skills from a man named Russ Sinclair, who had basically been very sick as a child and into adulthood, and ended up traveling all over the world and learning all these different ancient traditions. And one of the things that when he went around the world and was at all these different clinics, one of the things that they always focused on was breathing. No matter where he went, he found that one of the key components was breathing. So he put this into his lifestyle practice, and then eventually got out of his he had a pretty good illness. He eventually came out of it. My own success story is with my own daughter. She was diagnosed with asthma when she was around 6. And it was getting pretty rough there, but we could do rib adjustments on her and give her these breathing exercises, and she's been fine. And so that's why I have a few bragging rights here. She just won the Governor's Cup last weekend in soccer. So this was from a girl who they were telling me not to let her exercise. And we got her on breathing exercises. We adjust her ribs. And her twin sister wore a in a soccer championship in Topeka last week, and they won the Governor's Cup. So these things, these simple little things, can be powerful. She was never on any medication. I never let him put her on a steroid or anything like that. So simple breathing exercises can be powerful. Okay, we have time for some questions.
How young did you start training for breathing?
She was around 7. Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, let me wait on the mic. I'll have you wait on the mic just a minute.
2 questions. What did you mean by adjusting her ribs?
There's some chiropractic adjustments you can do to the ribs. We know that there's 3 components to breathing: the abdomen, the rib cage, and the upper chest. So if any of the ribs become displaced or aren't moving like they should, your breathing may be, it may be off a little bit. So when she would go into asthma attacks, instead of doing the inhalers, I could go adjust her ribs and reset her breathing apparatus, and she did just fine.
Do the chiropractors in general know how to do this?
Yeah, a lot of them do, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, second question is, I have started running to try to increase my lung volume. What do you recommend breathing exercise while running?
That last one we did, you can do the compound where you do a little bit of bellows and a complete. Yep. Okay, right. Okay, her and then
now,
her.
You said not to pause while you were doing. Now, do any of the pauses when you're doing the exercise when you're running or something?
Yeah, if you're running, you don't need to do the pauses.
No pauses at all. You just
no
do them.
pauses.
Okay. Also, how often should you do these exercises?
If you can do them a couple times a day at least, or any time you're thinking about it. I tell people do 10 to 20 reps.
Or just the compound?
The compound, yeah.
Would the breathing exercises help a great deal with infections in the lower part of your lung?
It's a possibility. Like I said, a lot of bacteria or things can be anaerobic, so the more you can feed the oxygen, the better off you'll be. So that's a possibility.
I have a granddaughter who has asthma really bad. How often should she have a chiropractic adjustment? She uses inhalers all the time.
I'd have her find a chiropractor and have her evaluated and see what they thought. But it was nice for me because the instant she had the attack, I could do it instantaneously and it's gone. So, if you don't have one of those guys with you at all times, then I don't know. I'm for rent if you...
You mentioned scoliosis as a restrictive problem. What about concave chest?
Yeah, that's another, because it's concaving in, and that does put pressure right in the midline, so on both lungs. Yeah, depends the severity of the concavity, but that can be a restrictive problem.
Now, how do these breathing exercises help you more than just aerobic exercise? When you're getting all that extra oxygen when you're doing...
These are just training you how to breathe properly when you are getting that aerobic exercise. So what we're trying to do is get that breathing apparatus really working, because when you look at this, you're really focusing on breathing, pushing your abdomen out, expanding your rib cage. A lot of the times when you do aerobics, I'll watch people and their ribs don't move at all.
But they're getting the good oxygen.
They're getting oxygen in, but they could probably get in even more and expand their capabilities if they used all 3 parts of their lungs.
What's the value of inhalers?
Well, because they dilate the airways. There's 2 types. You have the anti-inflammatories or the dilators. So one, they can decrease inflammation in the airways. The second thing is they dilate the airways. So they just let the air in and out better.
Do you have steroids in them?
You can get them with or without.
How important are the diaphragms? If you have one that isn't functioning right, can you take deep breaths and push it down, or would it work?
Depends what you mean by it's not working right.
I had a ruptured gallbladder, and they clipped a nerve, I guess, because the diaphragm's pushed up on the right side.
Yeah,
if
they clip the phrenic nerve, the 3, 4, 5 stay alive is what I call it. If they clip that nerve, then I think there's 2 innervations on both sides. I mean, you may be able to retrain part of the diaphragm.
That's what I wondered if I
and
could.
just thinking about it, your nerves, we used to think, okay, this muscle's only innervated by this nerve. But we know that your brain has plasticity and that eventually you can retrain things to send signals to different parts of your body. So the thought process is pretty powerful. You may be able to get some amount of control because that phrenic nerve is partly a voluntary nerve, but you also have involuntary nerves that may become under your control if you start to train them properly. So it's a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question.
Okay.
As I age, I especially notice that people become mouth breathers when they're sleeping at night, which is probably not a good thing. Is there anything you can do to discourage that a little better, or is that something that...
Put a cotton sock in their mouth? I tell, propping the pillows at night, that can help because you want to get that air... As much as you can help that air apparatus to do things properly. I say prop the pillows. Some people, though, they have their epiglottis just closes off unless they get that pressure, that CPAP machine to really force it open. So losing weight's the best thing. If you can lose weight and free up the pressure around the epiglottis up here so that airway will stay open. A lot of the times if you're overweight and you have puffiness in your neck or hypothyroid that causes puffiness in your neck, sometimes that epiglottis will close. And so the only way to forcefully get it to open is to force that air through the mouth. If you can lose that weight around the neck, then a lot of the times that thing will start to open and then you can start using your nose again. But a lot of us can't breathe through our nose. We're too stuffy. So you've got to work on things to get rid of the stuffiness. So there's a lecture on squeezing the stuffiness out of your sinuses. Have a look at that, and that'll give you ideas on how to also help you breathe through your nose. I think we have time for one more.
Well, speaking of sinuses, I've read about the nasal sprays. There's one called Air, and there's one called, it's that salty saline stuff.
Oh,
Do you think that that's helpful in keeping you clean?
Yeah, I think those salt solutions can be beneficial. They're just, what you're doing is putting a hypertonic salt solution into an isotonic environment, and bacteria and funguses and viruses don't like that hypertonic salt. So that'll kill them off pretty freely. Also, that hypertonic salt flushes any of the gunk in there, and so it washes it right out. I think those are good. But there's probably something that's irritating those sinuses that's causing them to swell, that's causing things to be trapped in there in the first place. So you do have to try to figure out what the trigger is that's causing the swelling and the trapping in the sinuses. Yeah.
When you talk about the diaphragm breathing and holding it for 2 seconds, if you hold it longer, 5 or 6 seconds, does that help your little air sacs?
No, I'd rather have you breathe in harder or breathe in longer, but I'd rather you not really pause any longer than about 2 seconds.
Why?
It's because you're just pausing. You're in a stationary manner. It's not really doing any benefit. I just do that so that you can really focus on training those muscles at first, but there's no reason to not continuously breathe.
The preceding program was presented by the Center for the Improvement of Human Functioning International and the Bright Spot for Health Lunch and Lecture Series. To inquire about additional health-related information available on DVD, audio CD, VHS, or audio cassette, simply call 316-682-3100 or drop by 3100 North Hillside in Wichita, Kansas. To discover more about the Center and what we have to offer, be sure and visit us on the web at www.brightspot.org.